the podcast that finishes your workday in a very Red Raider way. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hi, how are you? Good afternoon. Happy Monday. It's Tech Talk on Double T 97.3 and Double T 97.3.com alongside Chois Woodman and Clint Scott. I'm Aaron Dickens. We're joining you today until 6 o'clock. We'd love to hear your thoughts and your comments on the Yates Flooring Center chat line at Double T 97.3.com. All guests appear via the Benchmark hotline. Woodman, how you going?
I'm good. How's life?
Yeah, life is good.
It's been a little while.
Yeah, this
The knob?
no, it's not the knob, the receptacle for the headphone, right?
Oh.
I didn't want to get I just didn't want to start the show with like a double entendre or whatever.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
It's a little bit finicky,
Okay.
and so if I don't mess with it enough.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Especially, I come in after Chuck every day in that seat, and I don't know what's going on with Chuck, so that's just a general statement that
There should be like a whole Discovery Channel
Right.
documentary about that.
what's going on with Chuck.
Speaking of Discovery Channel, how about the snow crab stuff? Have you all seen this? Surely, Clint, you've seen this. I mean, you
snow
were
crab
off all
stuff?
week on a suspension. You had
It's
plenty of time.
I love to eat snow crab, but that's...
Well, then I have bad news for you.
Uh-oh. Is it going scarce?
Have you ever watched the show on Discovery Channel? I forgot what it's called, but where they follow the people in boats that fish for crab?
Like the Deadliest Catch?
Yes,
Deadliest Catch. Yes, that's the one.
It's a cool show. I don't know. I mean, I'm not invested in crab fishing, but the moment of anticipation when those pots come up, and you're like, oh man,
And that's the only
is it
show,
going to be packed with crab?
That's the only show if someone
That's all
calls
you
someone a
need.
greenhorn, you're going, oh snap.
Oh yeah, it's going
Burn.
down. Well, the snow crab season has been canceled.
Oh, no. Just the fishing season?
It's been canceled because I guess
No.
billions of snow crabs have disappeared from the waters around Alaska.
Crud.
It's a mystery of where they went? Or just
I mean, maybe
fished
I
out?
don't know that they just went on vacation. I think they just don't exist anymore.
Well, when you said
Yeah.
gone.
That's terrible.
So how about that?
No, that's awful.
I know. I didn't mean to open the show on a downer. I just kind of
That's a huge downer because
maybe your flannel will protect you
the
from those
prices are going to go ridiculously
That's
crazy.
his emotional support plan.
emotions. Yeah.
It is now. It's hugging me.
The quicker quilted picker upper Woodman.
Wait, is that Brawny? That's the same thing?
You tell us, man. You're the logo.
That's Downey,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Doesn't matter.
I was
Get
going
your
through
detergent
I'm
and your
singing-
paper towels correct, Aaron.
my
singing the song in my
limerick
head.
accuracy.
Wait, is it Downey? I give up.
Break me off a piece of that fancy feast.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, it's Bounty.
Bounty.
Yeah.
Downey's the fabric softener. My bad.
Yeah, Aaron, you idiot.
I know. God.
You greenhorn.
I'm correcting you with the wrong correction.
Our friend Bullfighter weighs in on the Yates Flooring Center chat line. It's because of all your stupid plastic straws, AD.
Killing the snow crabs.
Listen, dude. I cut up those plastic rings. I don't mind doing that.
It's nice of you.
Yeah, we.
I don't know how they end up in the ocean, but
But I will be damned if I give up plastic straws. I'm just not. I'll meet you more than halfway in a lot of things. I'll
I'm
use
with you.
the crappy Christmas lights that aren't nearly as good, but they're way more energy efficient. Same with the light bulbs. I'm good with that. But like Charlton Heston said, you can take my plastic straws from my cold, dead hand. Not happening.
that's exactly what he said.
You know how when I don't know what government agency kind of regulates this, but when I guess the government, whatever that is, and I could be, kind of truncating the timeline here.
Mm-hmm.
But when they came out and said, hey, we're going to transition away from the incandescent light bulbs or whatever, and there was kind of run on the old traditional kind of light bulbs and stuff, people selling on eBay and stuff. If that happened with plastic straws, I'm going to fill my entire house. My entire house.
I kind of
when you ever see the movie Blow, where
I know the movie.
They've got money stashed everywhere in this house, and in closets, and they just have no other place to put it. That's going to be me with plastic straws.
with plastic straws. I believe it. I do believe it. Yeah, I'm surprised you haven't gone and tried out the old metal straw.
No,
where you just carry your own around.
No, I don't want to be responsible for washing my straw,
Well,
right?
like the best
or
part of the
worrying
straw
about
is it's
hey, is there
disposable.
something growing in there? Do I need to wash it? Do I not?
That's really inconvenient.
Yeah, I just want to just use it and then throw it away.
That's the worst
and then
part
kill some
about
crab.
the crinkle straws. They get stuff growing in them pretty quickly.
The what straws?
The ones that have the little crinkles in them.
You mean the silly
Anything
straw?
that's not straight.
Oh, but you just throw them away.
I'm talking about like the big ones that come with the
Oh, like one of those big kind of commemorative
big
mugs
cups.
or whatever.
Yeah, something
Sure,
like that.
sure.
Yeah. So now I'm with you. Paper straws are Satan's invention for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I hate them because you end up getting little floaty papers halfway through your drink.
Well, and you either like it ends up being very soggy,
Yeah.
or your lips begin to stick to the straw.
Right. It's all terrible.
No.
But yeah.
So this is what we discuss on Mondays after bye weekends. That's
Seems-
typically what happens.
Seems legit.
Yeah. Everything else good?
I think so. I mean, Tech's going to play in the Big 12 title game in 6 weeks, so
Oh, you think so?
well, I don't know.
Some thoughts rolling in on the Yates Flooring Center chat line. Somebody says the best part of the straw is that it's disposable. No. Somebody else says this. I hated paper straws so much from my childhood. I grew up. I never had paper straws as a kid. Maybe I was sheltered.
I don't think I've had a paper straw until like 2 years ago.
Yeah,
And it was
my first. My first exposure was California. T Money 806 says, "Why do you still need a sippy straw, AD? I don't need one. I like to drink stuff like soda from a straw if it's not from a can." This on the Yates Flooring Center chat line from Bobby Hot Dogs. AD Clinton Choice, what could possibly go wrong or off the rails here? I don't know. It's going to be very straight and narrow. We're going to break down the bullpens of the two teams in the NLCS.
obviously.
We're going to go super in depth on the Guardians and Yankees, and break down this Monday Night Football matchup big time. Spend a whole hour on the Jack Easterby stuff in Houston. So it's going to be hard-hitting, hardcore sports. This on the Yates Flooring Center chat line. Hey, guys, I just want to say that no matter what is going on with my life, whether good or bad, listening to y'all's show brings a smile and comfort to my face. Y'all keep me sane sometimes. Just want to say thanks and have a great day. Hey, you too. I appreciate it very, very much. This on the Yates Flooring Center chat line from T-Money 806. No big deal, AD. Just eat imitation crab meat. No one but Choice and his caviar taste will notice.
Lie. Imitation crab is one of the biggest lies around. Can you taste the difference? Have you ever had
I don't
it?
know that I've ever really tried to discern the difference.
I've had it. Maybe the problem is the only place I ever tried imitation crab
Was
was
Dumas?
No, not Dumas. Was
They have the best ceviche
was
in
it-
Dumas.
was a Chinese buffet, or there were other things that were very questionable. So maybe that's the problem. Maybe I need to try it somewhere more fresh. But no, imitation crab is a lie.
Would you do the Impossible Whopper challenge with said imitation crab?
Absolutely, I would.
What?
But the remember where I kind of screwed up the one time I was on with you and taste testing the Whopper versus the Impossible Whopper? I could absolutely. I am much more confident I would get the crab versus imitation crab correct. But I wouldn't trust Clint to provide the crab because it's probably going to be 3 weeks old from somewhere.
Hey, buddy, you want some snow crab?
This on the Yates Flooring Center chat line from Matthew. Finally, a night game. Baylor will be lit. Yes, the game time announced today for the Baylor game. 6:30 kickoff. More Tech Talk next.
It's every Red Raiders' favorite podcast. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hey there, it's the Juice on Double T 97.3 and Double T97.3.com alongside Chois Woodman and Clint Scott. I'm Aaron Dickens. Today's look at your sports headline brought to you by our good friends at Specs Wine, Spirits, and Finer Foods. Two convenient locations here in town, West Loop and 4th Street behind the Whataburger. Also, Slide Road and 69th Street. And if you can't get out and about today, you can always go to specsonline.com as well. We'll have Monday Night Football for you this evening on Double T 97.3 with coverage beginning at 6:30. the Denver Broncos at the Los Angeles Chargers. That will follow the Cowboys Hour, which will begin at 6 here on Double T 97.3. We'll also have playoff baseball for you this evening on 100.7 The Score, though we'll be joining it in progress after the High School Fan Zone concludes at 8 o'clock. It's Game 5, winner take all, between the Cleveland Guardians and the New York Yankees. It's the first winner take all game at Yankee Stadium in a decade. The winner will advance to take on the Houston Astros, which concluded a sweep of the Seattle Mariners over the weekend, thanks in large part to an 18-inning 1-0 win on Saturday.
Who do you want?
I want the Yankees. I want more Yankee tears.
Fair enough.
Yep. The Red Raider men's basketball team will enter the 2022-23 season ranked number 25 in the Associated Press preseason top 25 poll. Red Raiders, of course, as we all know, coming off of a trip to the Sweet 16, where they finished the season ranked number 12 in the AP top 25. North Carolina tops the poll, followed by Gonzaga and then Houston. Kansas checks in at number 5, along with Baylor. They're tied for 5th place. Other Big 12 teams in the poll, Texas is at number 12, and TCU is number 14. You too can join the program. We'd love to hear your thoughts and comments today on the Yates Flooring Center chat line at doublet973.com. Of course, the juice brought to you by our good friends at Specs Wine, Spirits, and Finer Foods. This on the chat line from T-Money 806. What's your take on Tennessee asking for donations to replace their goalposts? I think that's just like one of those cheeky kind of fundraising deals. They're not really passing the orange hat to buy new ones.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they'll take the money and be
sure.
fine
No,
with using it. But,
yeah, they're just it's a fundraising opportunity.
But
for
it's one of those things where, I mean, everybody kind of wants to be a part of everything over there right now, so you might as well take advantage of it.
I think you nailed it.
So people can be like, yeah, I helped pay for those goalposts.
Because it's when you lose, and they've done a lot of that in recent years, and certainly Tech has too. Everything sucks. Right, uniforms suck, game day operation sucks, the music at the stadium sucks, the band sucks, the mascot sucks, the coach sucks, the players suck, everybody sucks, everything sucks. But if you win, especially like they did on Saturday, everything is great. And so, you can really do no wrong, and if you open up an opportunity for folks to give you money, odds are they'll give you money, and lo and behold, that's what's happening.
What a crazy game. It's pretty awesome.
It was a great day of college football.
It was. I mean, kind of the perfect bye-week setting for us to just sit and watch football all Saturday.
Which would have been awesome to do, but my internet was down for pretty much the entire day.
You too, huh? Yeah, me too.
Really?
Yep. It said it was an area outage in your area issue.
I don't think that we have the same provider.
Probably not. But I think we had internet issues here this morning, and I know they don't have the same provider as me. So
weird.
So I think internet issues across Lubbock.
See, because I've had the same provider for like 3 years, and it's been awesome.
Yeah.
And then twice in the last 2 weeks now, just kind of randomly just crapped the bed.
Really?
Anyways.
Okay.
I was quite unhappy. I was able to watch on my phone still.
That's how I had to watch on Sunday, actually.
But still,
I had the issue.
Not quite the same. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, the TCU Oklahoma State game was very, very good. The Alabama-Tennessee game was very, very good. Even the Texas-Iowa State game was pretty compelling. Not much of a contest in Norman.
No.
That's the Oklahoma Sooners. Do you know how good they are? I mean, like, what were they going to do?
I was stunned. That I think, were we the only show that picked Oklahoma to cover that?
I think so.
Really?
Wow.
And you know what's funny? The bottom line pick for that was all on Jackson since I was suspended last week.
Right.
I wasn't allowed to make any picks. Also, I said, Jackson, go for it. And
I thought you sent them in and told Jackson he had to pick a certain way.
No.
Oh.
He just knew that a week before I had picked for us, and I picked the Eagles for him. so he picked the Jayhawks for me. Solidarity on the bottom line is what we have.
This in the Yates Flooring Center chat line. Jim Harbaugh and Matt Rhule will swap jobs in the offseason. I was going to talk about Matt Rhule because, and maybe this has been has been discussed over the last year or so. But, Matt Rhule was fired.
Mm-hmm.
And so typically once the body is, dead, even if it's still warm, the postmortems come out, right?
Sure.
All the stuff that people didn't want to talk about once, when they were still employed as kind of their coach, once they're gone, hey, let's dump on them. Let's say all the bad things that we thought about them. And the criticism with Matt Rhule was he coached like he was still in college.
Okay.
Which you just can't really do that in the NFL and be successful. It's not the same group of people that you're coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And so Matt Rhule apparently had kind of this like mission statement document that he had with the Panthers. It was distributed internally and talked about kind of how like their philosophy, etc. This is a quote. This is a quote from that document. All right, let me know if this sounds familiar.
All right.
We have a brand at the Panthers. This brand defines us both on the field and in everyday life. We are the toughest, hardest working, most competitive team in the NFL.
Oh boy. I don't know where I've heard that before. I would say that's very.
Somebody is copying off of somebody else's paper.
Someone is. Do you think Little McGuire brought it to the Panthers, or the other way around?
Okay. Again, stop me if this sounds familiar. Under Matt Rhule, the Panthers had a plan to win. The first point: don't beat ourselves.
Okay.
Right. Penalties, turnovers. Win the line of scrimmage.
Are there 7 points here?
Win the middle 8 in the final 5.
Okay. I will say, all jokes aside, that does sound very collegey.
It does. Well,
it
is.
It's so much more.
So now I'm curious, was this Matt Rhule's Baylor template, right? That McGuire brought here and Rhule brought to Carolina?
Right.
Like where did this start? Who had a role in it?
Yeah.
Right.
Curious where it started to.
Listen, I don't care what you say or whose kind of template you use if you win games. Mm-hmm. That's all that I care about. But
for sure.
I definitely did a double take when I saw that the Panthers were going to be the toughest, hardest working, most competitive team in the NFL.
My initial thoughts is it has to be Rhule first and Joey taking it from Rhule, but I don't know. I guess it could be the other way around. Doubtful. But who knows? Maybe Joey brought that in from high school and Rhule adopted it there.
Could totally. Yeah, I have no. I'm not pretending to know where it started.
It's just it's interesting.
It's very clear that there's some paper copying going on.
All right. Matt Rhule, Texas Tech analyst.
But
next week.
no, I think Matt Rhule probably does end up back in college.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's this offseason or next. I think he's a much better college coach than he is an NFL coach. I do wonder if this will sour owners and GMs on hiring from college. You look at Cliff Kingsbury, who's not doing great right now with the Cardinals.
Sheesh.
A lot of injuries there, too. They just traded for a receiver. Anyways, more tech talk next.
The podcast put together with Red Raider fans in mind. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hi there, it's Tech Talk on Double T 97.3 and Double T 97.3.com alongside Chois Woodman and Clint Scott. I'm Aaron Dickens. We're joining you today from the First United Bank Double T 97.3 studio. With you until 6 o'clock. We'll have the Dallas Cowboys hour coming on at that time, followed by coverage of Monday Night Football, Broncos at the Chargers. We'd love to hear your thoughts and your comments today on the Yates Flooring Center chat line at doublet973.com. You can also access that through the Double T 97.3 mobile app presented by Happy State Bank. I'm curious, gentlemen, what's your big takeaway from this weekend in the Big 12? There were 4 games, 3 of them on Saturday, 1 on Thursday. And for the most part, they were all very close. 3-point margin in Morgantown between Baylor and West Virginia. 3-point margin in overtime with Oklahoma State and TCU. A 10-point margin with Kansas and Oklahoma. That game was fairly lopsided at the half, but KU made it somewhat competitive. And then Texas squeaking by Iowa State 21-24 in Austin.
I guess if I'm doing some overreaction type of takeaways from the weekend, one is we still don't have a freaking clue what this league is after the halfway point in the season. No one has done anything. I'd probably say I feel fairly confident that the Big 12 will not have a college football playoff team.
Really?
Oh yeah. You think they will?
I think there's a decent chance.
Who?
TCU is looking.
I still cannot buy into TCU. I watched that whole game, and they're the lesser team that found a way to win. OSU gave that game away to me.
You think so?
Oh yeah.
Here's why I think TCU has a pretty good chance.
Okay.
They play K-State this weekend in Fort Worth.
Correct.
Right. K-State's a ranked team. I think I don't know this. I haven't seen the line. I'm sure they're favored. TCU is. They should win that game.
I believe 3 or 4.
Okay,
is what it's.
Yeah, they should win that game.
Yeah.
At West Virginia, at home against Texas Tech. They play in Austin. At Baylor, home against Iowa State. They'll be favored, I would sure think, in almost all of those games. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to win them, right? Alabama was favored against Tennessee, I think. They lost. But they've got a pretty clear path to a undefeated season, 1-loss season, if they kind of keep it going, right?
Right, but they've flirted with I would gamble a decent amount of money that there will be 0 teams in the Big 12 finishing with less than 2 losses.
Not possible.
I just feel like this league is too cannibalistic. I think it's not like TCU is head and shoulders above the rest. They haven't shown that. I think that they will trip up somewhere. Could be this weekend. What an inherent advantage for TCU, who normally gives their stadium up to everybody, playing against another team in purple this week. So no one's going to be able to tell how many other.
But their toughest games are behind them, and I think Texas as well.
I think K-State's the next toughest for TCU. I wouldn't say that's behind. I think that's a top 3 team in this league.
Okay. I think that their toughest game was this past weekend, right? And I think that they won that game. I think Kansas State represents a different kind of challenge.
Sure.
Whereas Oklahoma State, it was talent and coaching. I think that with K-State, it's mostly just kind of coaching. But the Texas, I think, has a good chance too. I mean, there is a narrative that is ready for them to take advantage of if they win games.
I was before last weekend. I'm kind of there with you with Texas until they they're at home against Iowa State and really should have lost that game late, get a favorable call in a non-targeting situation. And I thought, okay, Texas last week, this team's looking like they're supposed to look. And then this week, that it's just more inconsistency.
That's the lesson from this season, right? Is that there really is no great team that has just rolled through and just crushed everybody. Like Georgia arguably should have lost to Missouri, right? And Missouri's terrible. They're dog water. Alabama had a near miss against Texas, had a near miss against Texas A&M, right? And then they finally lose to Tennessee.
Right.
I don't think Tennessee is some kind of juggernaut. I mean, they're flawed just like everybody else is. They're undefeated, which is great. They're a very good football team. They could go to the playoff, no question.
Sure.
But they could also stub their toe, right?
Yeah, they could.
With Texas, I think a mark of a good team is sometimes when you're not playing your best against a team that you should beat, relatively handily, you find a way to win. Look at Texas Tech in 2008, right? I mean, they easily could have lost to Nebraska, right? They didn't have their best stuff against Nevada and Reno, which is a terrible place to play. and yet they found a way. They should have beat Texas by more.
Yeah.
Like they were in control of that game. And so if you just look at Texas, they've got a narrative, man, ready to use.
Sure they do. Absolutely.
You narrowly lose to Alabama at home when your quarterback goes out. You lose in overtime to Texas Tech with your quarterback out.
They will gladly use this narrative. Yeah.
Well, and I think people will give them the benefit of the doubt.
I think they
here.
will too.
Now they've
I don't
got
know
to
that
win.
they would if they didn't have the Longhorn on their helmet.
They've got to win, and that's going to be tough, right? They play at Oklahoma State this weekend. Then they play at Kansas State. That's two very, very tough games. Now, granted, they get a bye week in between, but still.
I'd still be surprised if they escape that without.
And then they play
any
TCU
losses.
in Austin. That's a very, very tough 3-game stretch. But if they go through it unscathed, right, that 22 next to their name will quickly jump into a top
10.
5 kind of team. And I think they're a team also that the advanced metrics really like for whatever reason. So, yeah, it's not going to surprise me at all in the Big 12 because for as much as we focus on how the Big 12 will cannibalize each other, the same thing will happen elsewhere. Like, are you really that impressed with Michigan? They haven't. I mean, they played Penn State. Neither of those two teams have played anybody. Right? We know that Penn State's not very good.
I
They're
think
fraudulent.
I am impressed with Michigan. I don't like it being impressed with anything Big Ten wise. Yeah, I agree with that they're fraudulent, or that Penn State is fraudulent, but at least Michigan's looked pretty good in what they've done so far.
Sure, I mean, I agree. That's fair, but I also think that they're going to get the same benefit of the doubt helmet-wise.
Sure they will. Absolutely.
You kind of turned your nose up with the Longhorns.
No,
you know what I'm saying?
No, it's just a blue blood in general conversation.
Ohio State, very good. Michigan, probably good. The rest of the Big Ten is sorry.
Part of that statement of no college football playoff team from the Big 12 is also what's going on elsewhere. That you have that extra team in the SEC this year with Tennessee, not just Georgia and Bama, that you have both Michigan and Ohio State that are good. It has to do a lot with the blue bloods of college football being pretty good across the board. So,
I agree with you on the. I don't think a Big 12 team will be in the playoff, and I think a lot of it has to do with what you saw on Saturday with Tennessee being a part of that triangle. Because Tennessee has to play Georgia. Or they do play Georgia in the regular season, right? Let me lay out this situation. Alabama is excluded from the SEC championship game, but they're still riding high in those playoff rankings. And either pick one between Tennessee or Georgia, and they win, and they're going to leave out Alabama. It seems like it's set up for there to be 2 SEC teams in the college football playoff, the way that they're so highly regarded. And I look at Clemson. I think the toughest game on the rest of their schedule is this week with an unranked undefeated Syracuse team, and then probably Ohio State. So I look at that, and I have a hard time imagining a Big 12 school getting there unless they're undefeated. And right now that would be TCU, and I just don't think they'll do that.
Yeah.
I just think there's still a lot more chaos left to come in the SEC.
I agree.
I think that I'm lumping myself. Is it flannel day here in the station?
I walked in at like 7 this morning, saw Liz, and I'm like,
oh, we're in the same thing.
we're buddies. Yeah, we're matching today. It really made you do a double take.
Yeah, I just think that we fall in this trap of kind of extrapolating. Okay, well, this team is under
Sure,
and then kind of
we're prisoners of the moment.
Fast forwarding through the rest of the
We
season.
are.
I mean, Alabama still has Mike Leach, right? This coming weekend.
Yeah.
They get Ole Miss in Oxford. It's a top 10 football team.
Has Ole Miss lost? They haven't, right?
No, they're undefeated.
That's what I thought.
And
So
I mean, again,
there's an extra team.
Ole Miss
Yeah.
too. That's a good example
There's an
because
extra team.
they're 7-0, right? Their best win is a 3-point win over Kentucky, and they kind of ugly, kind of sloppy game against Auburn. And so it's like, why are we giving them so much credit, Ole Miss?
Yeah.
When Oklahoma State has a more impressive resume.
You know who TCU reminds me of? The Oklahoma State team that we just kept going through. Well, I can't remember the year, but a few years back, there was an Oklahoma State team. It's like, this isn't that good of a team, but then they found their way to 9-0 or 10-0. It feels like this TCU team, they're winning some uglier games. They're finding a way, and maybe they could be one of those that do that.
I can't believe that I'm like, they've played 3 straight ranked opponents.
You are advocating for TCU.
Right? And then if you throw in the 4th game before that, it was a rivalry. So they've had a pretty tough stretch. Let's see what they do when things open up. More Tech Talk next.
the podcast that finishes your workday in a very Red Raider way. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
This on the Yates Flooring Center chat line. So y'all think Tech will beat TCU, do you? I think Tech can win that game. I think that's the beauty of the Big 12 this year. But I wouldn't bet my own money on it right now, no.
No, I think you'll probably be a 6 or 7 point favorite down, or underdog, pardon me, down there. But I wouldn't put it past you. Who knows what happens? Injuries are such a huge part of everything in the Big 12, especially when you don't have teams with large margins for error. Because it seemed like OSU was kind of beat up a little bit this past weekend, and the depth or lack thereof showed. TCU looks like they've stayed pretty healthy, but if they get injuries to the wrong spots, Johnston,
right.
I mean, if he goes down.
Talking about margin for error.
Yeah.
Right.
He creates
gives you a lot of it.
A whole lot of it. And that guy's playing on Sunday next year. Duggan, is he playing as the best quarterback in the Big 12 right now?
Yeah, that's a gross conversation.
It is a
frankly.
gross conversation, but I mean, you look at it. I don't know who I'm arguing in front of him at the moment.
So Spencer Sanders leads the Big 12 in passing yards per game. In terms of quarterback rating, Duggan is atop the field. Yep. Kansas quarterback Jalen Daniels is right behind him.
Okay.
And I think were Jalen Daniels healthy and playing, even if they would have still lost to Oklahoma, I think I probably would have had him as the best quarterback in the Big 12 based on what he's been able to do statistically and with what team. You know what I'm saying?
That's
because he doesn't have a Quentin Johnston.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So
and then Dylan Gabriel's not bad. Like he's not having a bad season. It's just and certainly we're familiar with this dynamic here in Lubbock, but he's saddled with a terrible defense.
We are very familiar with that.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I wouldn't say Tech can't lose or can't win that game in Fort Worth, but I wouldn't pick it that way right now.
And, I mean, okay, just throwing it out there. Where does Adrian Martinez belong in this discussion?
I think his ceiling, like when he is at his best, it may be the best in the league. I'm not talking about throwing the football. I'm just talking about hardest to stop. I'm not sure that there's anybody better than him when he's on his A game. And we've seen it really just twice this year against Texas Tech for a couple of quarters and all game against OU. But
if you just look at conference games, right, and that's very convenient for Martinez because that K-State offense was terrible against Tulane. But if you look only at conference games, he's second in the league in terms of total offense per game.
Really? Would not have guessed that.
Behind Duggan.
But
so I don't know. I mean, K-State's one of those teams. They're pretty good. They could certainly make an impact in the title race. And Martinez is going to be a big part of that. You know, if they continue to be successful. Sure. I just wouldn't sleep on him.
Yeah, and that's what's so hard about this league. There's no clear-cut number one team. There's no clear-cut number one QB. And there's no clear-cut bottom feeder either. I mean, most years you have both of those things in the Big 12
Yeah, because Iowa State is winless in the conference. I don't want to play them. No. I'm not feeling excited about that game. And then the Mountaineers, had a big win on Thursday.
Right. I mean, I think most people before last week would have said, okay, West Virginia's your bottom team in the league. But
we get this in the Yates Flooring Center chat line. How is Penn State a fraud? They were undefeated. You just hate the Big Ten. Obviously, I do too, but what makes them a fraud? So I guess everyone is a fraud. No, they were a fraud because they were 5-1 and ranked in the top 10, and they hadn't beaten anybody. They hadn't played anybody.
They're 5-0 going into the game, right?
Yeah, no, they were 5-0 going into the game.
Yeah,
they beat an Auburn team that is, being led by a coach who's going to get fired, and everybody knows it. They beat Central Michigan. Congratulations. They beat Northwestern, who's terrible, and they beat Purdue. Like, it's what part of that resume says top 10? I mean, you can only play who you play, but clearly,
right.
The fact that they got smoked 41-17 by the first team with a pulse that they played. Yep, fraud. Sorry. I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
I think that's, you get uncomfortable when people sing. I think when you sniff a microphone, I didn't know what made me uncomfortable.
Because this is the same conversation that folks were having about Texas Tech in 2013.
Sure it is.
Sure. 7-0 on a Charmin soft schedule, and they play Oklahoma and lose. Now, granted, to be fair to that 2013 Tech squad, they were competitive in that game, far more so than Penn State was against Michigan.
You could have or should have won that game.
You didn't give up 400-plus yards rushingly. If you are an undefeated team, ranked in the top 10, and you give up 418 rushing yards, sorry, you're a fraud.
Look,
period.
I think Penn State, to me, they're more fraudulent just because it's one of those. I don't think they're a true blue blood, but if it's one of those that they get benefit of the doubt because of their name. If you had the same resume for a different team going 5-0 up to that point, I'm trying to think of an example. A Northwestern, say if Northwestern's 5-0, they're going to be ranked, but they're not going to be top 10 at that point. So,
this on the Yates Flooring Center chat line. So hold on. Who isn't a fraud, AD? According to you, they all are. So are you pro James Madison for the playoff? Well, James Madison lost this weekend, so no, they're definitely out. And no, I mean, like, if you are a top 10 team and you go in and get blasted by the first real team that you play by 20-something points and give up 400-plus yards rushing, you're a fraud, period. Right? I mean, that's what it is. Tennessee's not a fraud.
No.
I don't think Alabama's a fraud. I don't think Ole Miss is a fraud.
What about Clemson? Someone asked that earlier.
I mean, no. I don't think
who have they played up to this point? I mean, Florida State was arguably the best team they've played this year.
They had a close game against Wake Forest, right on the road.
Right. NC State, somewhat close at home, and now NC State is going to look terrible from here on out with the quarterback situation. Holy cow. I don't have anybody that can throw it after Leary.
Clemson at this point has played more quality teams than Penn State. Period, point blank.
Yeah.
No matter the outcome, just who they've played. Wake Forest is a legitimately good football team, right? Especially when their quarterback is healthy. NC State was a legitimately good football team when Devin Leary was available and healthy, which he was for that game. Florida State's not a bad football team. And then they'll play Syracuse this weekend, which is also undefeated. I feel they're certainly fraudulent, but still, not a bad test for Clemson. So, yeah, Clemson's fine. I mean, like, the ACC this year is better than the Big Ten. The Big 12 is significantly better than the Big Ten this year.
As a whole body, absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, there's no doubt.
Both of those, yeah.
Fight me. More Tech Talk next.
It's every Red Raiders' favorite podcast. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
You too can join the program. Would love to hear your thoughts and comments on the Yates Flooring Center chat line at doublet973.com. This in the chat line. So Texas Tech will win out and finish the season with only 2 losses in the Big 12. Is that going to be enough to get them into the championship game? I'd love to find out. That's for sure. Let's game it out, shall we?
Game it out. Let's go.
Where's our game it out music? Come on, man.
Is that a thing?
I'm kidding. I no. This is the first time we've ever used the phrase "game it out." On
I
the
wondered.
Show, so. I deserve that. All right. So, Texas Tech 1-2 in the Big 12 right now.
Yeah.
They've played Texas and Oklahoma State and Kansas State. Those teams are ahead of them in the standings. You do not have an opportunity to directly affect their record, right?
Right.
Because you've already played them. In the case of Texas, you beat them.
Correct.
You do play TCU. They're undefeated. Right. You do play Kansas, which has the same number of losses as you. West Virginia, Baylor, Oklahoma, and Iowa State. I think there's an okay chance if you just won out that you'd make it to the title game in the Big 12. I don't know that it would be a lock by any stretch.
So you need either Oklahoma State or Kansas State to have 3 losses, essentially.
Well, depending on what else happens, yes. I mean, TCU could crater. I mean, if you just want to make it to that second spot,
right?
Because I would guess that in any
both of those teams have the tiebreaker on you
head-to-head.
Yeah.
Now, if things go beyond that,
right, then it could.
If it goes, if there's multiple teams tied, like 3 teams or more, it might be just kind of your record versus the number 1 team. And in that case, if you went out and beat TCU already beat Oklahoma State. We'll see what they do against Kansas State.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see what they do against Texas. I don't know, a decent chance, but I wouldn't just bet the farm on it.
Nor would I, but I think
you wouldn't even bet one of your mini farms.
Mini, like poquito or
multiple?
Multiple. Okay. No.
This from PJ on the Yates Flooring Center chat line. Speaking of bad teams, how bad is Notre Dame right now? Lost to a very, very awful Stanford team at home on Saturday, 16-14, real barn burner. Yeah, Stanford is very, very bad. It's a terrible loss for Notre Dame. And you're kind of seeing this dynamic both in South Bend and in Norman. And I think that there was some of this, too, in Lubbock, following Mike Leach's departure, where you just kind of assume that, hey, the last guy, what he did wasn't so tough. Anybody could kind of duplicate that here.
Yeah.
And then you come to find out that maybe not so much, because Brian Kelly, I think, was not the most popular person in South Bend when he left for LSU for good reason. I understand the emotions there. I get it.
Fair statement. Yeah.
But I think the thought was that Marcus Freeman was going to come in and be a younger, better version of Brian Kelly and just kind of keep on rolling, and the wheels have come off. They've been a massive disappointment. And then kind of the same thing at Oklahoma, right? I mean, they were a preseason top 10 team. I don't remember hearing anything from anybody in Norman or from Oklahoma media circles kind of expecting some kind of massive step back.
No.
And yet here we are, they're 1-3 in the Big 12.
I heard plenty of dissent on in terms of people not liking the hire of Brent Venables, but still the expectation was we're still should go compete for a league title.
Was I think the thought.
As far as Marcus Freeman goes, I think he's still bought himself some time with how well he's recruited. You think? I mean, don't they have the number 1 class for?
Well, I think that
23.
I think Notre Dame and Oklahoma too. There's a level of institutional arrogance there to where, listen, we don't fire people after 1 year. We don't do that here.
Right.
That's kind of a lower class move.
Mm-hmm.
We don't panic at Notre Dame. So he's not going anywhere. But yeah, I think that you can more often than not have a pretty good idea of whether someone is going to work out or not relatively quickly. It's not always the case.
No, but like Dave Aranda is a good example of the opposite, except he's come back to the pack a little bit. Had a pretty rough first year at Baylor. Then had a really good second year at Baylor. But that first year was during COVID too, so it's harder to judge. And now he's come back to 500. But most of the time you can kind of feel whether a guy's going to work out or not. Most of the time. There's sometimes the wait and see. They'll let the cake bake. If everybody loves it.
Was Baylor, I don't remember this, was Baylor hit hard by COVID attrition in terms of unavailabilities and stuff? They had 3 games postponed.
Yeah, I was about to say, they
So I don't remember how much of that was them or other teams.
Mostly other. No. One of them was Houston got all the way to Baylor.
Right.
And they had to cancel that game, if I remember correctly, or had to postpone it. Or they were on the bus or something like that. Most of it, I think, was other teams after that, but I can't remember.
That's going to be so impossible to remember.
Yeah, I mean, we're 2 years out, and we can't even
now.
I remember Tech played with a pretty limited roster the last game of the season. No coach. The last game of the season.
Because there's no excuse for Oklahoma's defense being as bad as it is.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, you pointed this out earlier in the show. I would have had never thought to compare the two, but so far, granted, only 4 conference games. But through 4 conference games, they're allowing more points.
That's almost
against
halfway
conference
through
opponents than Texas Tech did in 2016, and we all recall how awful that defense was to watch.
I mean, I think Pat Mahomes lost 4 games where they scored more than 40 points? Where
and
Texas
Venables
Tech
is a
scored more than
defensive
40
guy.
points. Yeah. That's
right?
I think that's the part that's so mind-blowing with this is that Venables is a defensive guy, and it's gone that badly on his side of the ball.
And, I don't pretend to be like super duper plugged into the goings on in Norman, but I like to read people and listen to people that are.
Mm-hmm.
And it, the thought process is that, they work the players way too hard in practice.
Yeah.
Right. To where they're kind of a bit worn down by Saturday. I don't know how much I buy into that, but that's a criticism going on right now in Oklahoma circles. And then also the scheme is very, very complicated. And he's been asked in press conferences, hey, are you going to simplify the scheme at all? And he's been defiant, no.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I guess I get standing on that principle, but at the same time, dude, you're 1-3 in the Big 12. Like, let's learn this in the offseason, figure it out.
Good coaches
win
adjust.
some football games.
Yeah.
More Tech Talk next.
Podcast put together with Red Raider fans in mind. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hi there, it's Tech Talk on Double T 97.3 and Double T 97.3.com with Joyce Woodman and Clint Scott. I'm Aaron Dickens. We're joining you today until 6 o'clock. We'll have coverage of the Dallas Cowboys Hour coming up at that time, followed by Monday Night Football Broncos at the Chargers. We'd love to hear your thoughts and comments today through the Double T, for the Yates Flooring Center chat line on Double T 97.3.com. This on the chat line. I think that it is unfair that we beat each other up in the Big 12 to not be considered. K-State should beat TCU at this point. K-State versus Oklahoma State. Texas is a mystery. Oklahoma State, I think if they go undefeated, they're going to be in. Right? Now, we can talk about how likely that is, and I think probably unlikely.
I mean, they may lose this weekend.
But I think, hopefully folks realize how objectively strong the Big 12 is this year.
Yeah.
The computers love the Big 12. You're not the SEC. You're still behind them.
Sure.
But you are... The computers think that you're better than the Big Ten right now. You're better than the ACC right now, way better than the Pac-12. And a lot of that has to do with Kansas not being, just awful. I mean, in fact, they're decent.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
So, first, the line in the Texas OSU game is weird to me. It's gone up to 6 in favor of the Longhorns.
It's 6 right now?
In Stillwater. I think it opened about 1.5, somewhere in there in favor of the Longhorns. It's gone up to 6 today. So that's pretty strange to me. I don't know what's going on there, if it's just the Longhorn fans betting like crazy or what. Secondly, if we had a 12-team playoff this year, how many Big 12 teams do you think would end up there?
I was at the over-under at 1.5.
Yeah, I think I'd be surprised if you got more than one in. Because, again, you've got so many teams that are right around that 10 to 15, 10 to 20 range, but not a lot of teams that can get into the top 10, in my opinion, beyond this when the season's over. So,
well, I mean, the SEC is going to get it. I mean, get theirs, right? Like they're going to put a bunch of teams in a 12-team playoff format, right?
Plenty, yeah.
I think that's fairly inarguable right now.
Right.
And then you have, Clemson will get in.
Yes.
Provided they more or less kind of stay steady. Michigan maybe, depending on how the rest of their season goes, even though, again, I still think fraud-ish. But, is the Pac going to get 2 teams in? I don't think so.
No, I mean,
I think at the first opportunity.
You saying in a normal year or this year? If there were 12
Well, no,
teams?
this year. Yeah, I mean, based on this, I think at any opportunity, the Pac is going to get punished because no one cares.
Agreed. Yeah.
You know, like UCLA is undefeated.
Pac's not going to be around in 2 years.
You know, like, and so TCU right now, Oklahoma State, even after a loss, is still top 12.
Yeah.
I think that, and I think in some ways, too, the Big 12's championship format this year could actually help it in a 12-team playoff scenario because you might have some kind of tie for that second-place spot. And so in that instance, let's say that let's say Oklahoma State goes undefeated.
Right.
And TCU goes undefeated, and then Oklahoma State and K-State finish with the same number of losses. You know, the team that doesn't play in that title game, they're not going to get punished for a loss. You know, they can just kind of hang out in that back part of the rankings.
Sure.
Because Ole Miss still plays Alabama. They still play Mississippi State. You still have the SEC title game. I mean, there are some more losses to be had for some of these highly ranked SEC teams just because they play each other down the road.
I think I'm extremely curious to see what the 12-team playoff looks like in terms of automatic bids, all sorts of things there. You've got to have the 5 automatic bids, right? Or 4 if it ends up being 4 conferences instead of the Pac-12 dissolves.
If it's, I think the proposal was the 5 highest ranked conference champions, right?
Right.
Yeah. So at this point, it would be, the Pac would be the 5th.
Pac would be the 5th. So I don't know. I guess you're just higher on the Big 12 overall than I am.
The computers are.
Yeah, the computers are, but I feel like so much more goes to eye test than computers when they make these decisions.
You breaking down a lot of film on Sundays there, Woodman?
No. But
you breaking down like technique and stuff?
People with the college football playoff committee tell you they do. they use that eye test pair of words quite a bit.
I think here's the disconnect. Right? I think this explains the disconnect. The Big 12, it hasn't really changed a whole lot, right, over the last few years. There's been a lot of parity, right? Maybe more so than other conferences. There have been a lot of good teams. I mean, how many times have we sat here in a studio, maybe not together, but just doing our shows and talked about how, 3 through 8, in the preseason poll, put them in any order, right? Because they're so close. So this year is not any different from that respect. The difference is Kansas, which you always kind of chalked up as being this god-awful team, winless in the Big 12, 1 win in the Big 12, whatever it is. Now they're just as good. And so you don't have a true bottom feeder.
No.
And that brings up everybody's average, so to speak. Because, SEC has Vanderbilt, right? The Big Ten has any number of those teams this year.
Right.
Right? The ACC has Georgia Tech.
Yeah. We haven't ever had this really in this current format of the Big 12, this 10-team Big 12. We've never had a year where any of the 10 teams halfway through, you could say any of those teams can still make a bowl game. Right? Every single year, by this point, we know, Kansas sucks again this year. And usually another team. It's like, they're going to be the bottom feeder down there, slightly above Kansas. This year, it is truly, every single team in the Big 12 right now could end up in a bowl game. Not mathematically speaking, but everyone is good enough to do that. And even, Texas Tech, a lot of people perceive them to be the 6th or 7th best team in the Big 12. West Virginia, most people perceive them to be the 10th team in the Big 12, yet they have the same record, same overall record.
Right.
3-3. Same for Baylor. Most people had them top half of the league.
If the Mountaineers played Iowa State right now on a neutral site, Who do you think would win?
That's a tough one.
And they're 0-4. Cyclones are.
Mountaineers by 3.
Iowa
Really?
State's going to win. Iowa State's going to win a game or two this year with their defense. They're going to win a game or two with the defense. I hope it's not the second to last of the year for Texas Tech, but I think I'd still favor West Virginia.
They have you would think with an 0-4 record that your point differential would be way out of whack.
Sure, supposed to be.
And they're underwater, as you would expect, but not by a lot. They've scored 65, which is not very good in conference play. They've given up 79. So they're 0-4. They've lost those 4 games by combined 14 points.
Yeah, I am fascinated for the 2 week 2 weeks from
far-
now when Oklahoma plays Iowa State to see if they.
Kansas,
scoring
meanwhile, 142 points scored, 143 allowed. How about that?
Yeah, the defense is truly terrible. But then I go to
Give us
Iowa
OU.
State and
110, 4, 187.
I just think it's interesting with the Cyclones that you're saying, their defense will win them a couple of games. The problem is the defense has been putting them in position to win those games,
Yeah,
and they have just crumbled under
fallen out.
pressure. I mean, a wide open receiver in Austin, just atrocious. A field goal kicker missing three, not long ones either.
Yeah, that is a if you're Texas Tech and you go into the rest of the schedule knowing that, hey, you got to play, your best to win a lot of these games. I think you're hoping for 3 more losses for the Cyclones.
I think so.
Just get them out of bowl eligibility, give them nothing to play for.
Exactly.
Maybe
Yeah.
they drink some quit.
You've been listening to the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3. Check out Double T973.com for more from Lubbock Sports Station.